Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to be joined by Lee Evans. Played 9 seasons in the NFL, 7 with the Bills, first round pick of the Bills in 2004. Two-time first-team All-American at Wisconsin. He was a track star. Came into the Bills wearing number 83. There's a little story behind that we want to ask him. But Lee, thanks for joining us. Where are you calling from?
Thanks for having me. It's great to see you, Don. It's been years, so it's good to reconnect with you again. And I'm calling from Virginia. I'm in the Northern Virginia area outside of DC.
Nice,
great.
Nice.
So Lee, before we get started, maybe you can tell everybody what you're doing now.
Right now, I'm doing a lot of real estate, so multi-family real estate, doing some investing and managing and that whole world of things. So. So
I'll tell you what,
I'm busy.
Yeah, Lee is. I was going to get to this at some point, but Lee, above and beyond being, a star player and unbelievable talent, was very in tune. He spent. He would come in my office where the players would pick up their paychecks. This is before direct deposit, and say, "You got a minute?" and shut the door and ask me, What's this? Every deduction being paid as an NFL player, it's pretty complex. There are a lot of benefits baked in, but there's also some deductions. And he wanted to know where every dime went, and he was very smart. So when guys would come to me and have questions, I was tempted just to say, "Go ask Lee Evans," but it was my job. I was being paid to do it, so I did it as much as I could. But
well, it was really shock of the taxes. That's really what prompted it.
Well, welcome to New York State, Lee.
Exactly.
So let's go back to your childhood, high school. Obviously, you're a football player, track star. Was football your favorite sport growing up? And then I like to ask the guys, when did you kind of know that college was in your future and that you were a standout and that this is something you could do long term?
College football was my favorite sport growing up. Sport I loved to play all the time. Even going back, in the front yard with friends, we would just play as much as possible. I mean, but I tried to play everything though, go to the playground, play baseball, basketball, but football was my number one sport. Going through high school, I wasn't the most talented player on my team. We had a couple other guys who had more talent and probably a little more athletic. So I just kind of just stayed to the grind and just kept doing what I enjoyed, and and it worked out. I think when I guess finally got a realization that it was possible was when colleges started recruiting me. In my junior year.
It's worth noting you're from that hotbed of Ohio football. We've had players. There's so many. It's so competitive there, and so to make it there is saying a lot.
Yeah, we had. I was small coming up, so I really didn't develop until a little bit later, and. We had a receiver who I went to Bedford High School. Chris Chambers was a receiver who I went to high school with. He came out. He was 2 years ahead of me, and when he came, he was getting a lot of looks, and a lot of colleges were coming after him. And so, I think that's when I kind of put myself on the radar. Colleges were looking at him and. I was 2 years removed, and so I at least got on the radar then, and and made an impression that third year, and and really got some interest.
Yeah, Chris Chambers broke our heart again. I don't know if you were with us yet at the time, but I remember when he was with the Dolphins, he made a final play of the game, jump up, hauled it in. We lost. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So Chris, you get recruited. What made you go to Wisconsin? Were there other opportunities or offers that you turned down? Like what led you to Wisconsin?
So Chris Chambers, he ended up going to Wisconsin, and so that's kind of how they even got on the radar. Yeah. But I had a number of different colleges, a number of different universities who were pursuing me. I took I took official visits to Notre Dame, Boston College. Went up to Michigan State. I went to West Virginia. And I landed on Wisconsin. The week I went there was the week they played Penn State to win and go to the Big Ten, to go to the Rose Bowl. Actually, at the time, it wasn't the Big Ten championship game. So the atmosphere was electric. The vibe was electric. It was a big win. So it was a big selling point.
I am guessing there was one certain day your senior year that Michigan State was really upset that they didn't land you. Not to get ahead of ourselves, because your junior year, let's talk about that game because it's amazing, the stat line. But your junior year, you tore your ACL. And I was reading an interview that you did with someone. You said that was kind of a pivotal year for you in terms of your physical development, your mental toughness, that kind of thing. How did that work for you?
Well, it was a shock to the system. One, I had a pretty big junior year and had the opportunity to come out, and I ended up staying in school, and then in the spring game is when I tore my ACL.
Okay.
And so that was going into my senior year. So we were trying to do everything we could to try to get back for that senior season, and I just didn't work out. So I actually redshirted my senior year and played my fifth year.
So Lee, maybe you could tell people, when you were thinking about coming out as a junior, after your junior year, is it the same as it is now for guys that are coming out early? Did you feel like, you were getting good advice? Like, is it hard when, some people's interests might be that you should stay, and then there's probably other people that really want you to go? Like, how difficult of a decision was that for you?
I mean, it was difficult. It was difficult. It was a difficult decision. And, it was one that I talked over with my family, with my coaches, and was just trying to, get as much information as possible. My junior year, there were a number of receivers coming out that year as well. So it was a pretty deep receiver class. I was up for the Biletnikoff that year. And so I was up there, and I was only a true junior. So, so I weighed a lot of that in my mind, with going back to college, be beneficial for one more year. Because everything was kind of new to me, right? Like, agents were coming out of nowhere trying to talk to me, and, coaches were trying to get me to stay. My parents were, trying to be supportive. So I made the decision to stay, and then, subsequently ended up getting hurt and learning a lot from that experience. I mean, that experience really, as you alluded to, Don, taught me a lot about learning myself, learning my body, learning some patience, and really trying to, become mentally strong to deal with the ups and downs of a game, of life, and, and how to still, persevere through that. So, so it was, you don't wish that on anybody, but, I tried to make the best of the situation and still, give myself an opportunity to play my senior year and be successful.
Right. Obviously, you did, as Josh was alluding to, your decision whether or not to come out your junior year. You're already seeing Chris Chambers be really successful pretty quickly in the NFL. I'm sure you're thinking, that I could do that as well. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a doubt of, it wasn't a doubt of myself of whether I could be successful or not. I mean, I thought I could, but at the same time, it was still just trying to weigh the pros and cons of if it's the best move for me to come in right now, right? Yeah. Could I, improve my draft status, by staying in another year. Like I said, it was a pretty deep class that year, and after getting hurt and coming back, it was a deep class the year I came in. So, sure. That's just the way it was. But I thought that I could improve a little bit more. I thought I still had, some improvement to do before going to the next level. And subsequently, that's why I made the decision.
Did you give any thought to coming out after, you tore your ACL? Did you give any thought to not coming back for the 2003 season?
No, I didn't really think about that. Really my whole mindset was to get back on the field, and I wanted to play. And we pushed pretty hard to try to get back on the field my senior year. And we did a lot of different things to try to get back, and
clearly it worked. It worked. You had a great year.
Yeah,
well,
so
the
the spring you sat out because so it was the spring you tore your ACL. You're trying to get back for that fall. That
Oh,
would
I
have
see.
been really
Okay.
aggressive.
Yep.
Here in Buffalo, fans watched Tre'Davious White tear his ACL on a Thanksgiving, and it was a full year. They were starting to
And Von Miller right now is going through the same thing.
Exactly. So then your fifth year, wow, talk about validating your decision. What a monster season you had, including the game we were alluding to earlier. So that Michigan State game, man, tell us what were you thinking as your 10 receptions, 258 yards, 5 touchdowns? My gosh, just take us to what was going on in your head. You got to be loving it.
Yeah, it was one of those days where you're really not thinking. Things are just kind of, happening. And, we knew Michigan State was a very aggressive team, so we knew it was going to be a lot of man-to-man, which, for me, I love, right? So, we were able to run the ball effectively, and so we ended up in a lot of those man-to-man situations, and Jim Sorgi was the quarterback, and he was just letting them go. And like I said, it was one of those days where, I just wasn't thinking. I was just playing hard and trying to make as many plays as possible, and the ball just kept finding me. So it was a ton of fun. It was a ton of fun to, have that experience in Camp Randall in front of the home fans and get a big win in a big time for us trying to get into, bowl eligibility.
Before we get to draft day, you mentioned Camp Randall. I was going to ask you, obviously the famous jump around. Is that a top 3? I know you're biased, but is that like a top 3 atmosphere in college football? It's one of the places that I want to go to at some point to see a game, but I'm assuming that the whiteout at Penn State, maybe LSU, Alabama, but Camp Randall's got to be a special place to play.
It's unique. It's unique. And especially that third quarter, that end of the third quarter jump around is one of the most unique experiences that you'll have really in any stadium. And, you can tell it's unique because the opposing team and the opposing fans kind of get into it a little bit. You can tell they try to block it out, but it brings that type of energy. So that's really what makes it unique and a lot of fun to be a part of. And
it's big because the network doesn't go to commercial. So when the network's not going to commercial, costing themselves some money, it's worth seeing. So Lee, let's skip ahead. We love to ask the guys what their draft day experience was like. Where did you think you were going? What position did you know you were a first rounder? What were your recollections of that day?
Yeah, I believe that I was going to be a first rounder. I didn't really know where I was going to land. I visited a number of teams, obviously at the combine, talked to many teams, and subsequently went to visit a few teams after that.
Did you visit Buffalo?
I did. And, at the time I said, like I said, it was a pretty deep receiver class. We had, Fitzgerald, Roy Williams, Reggie Williams, Michael Clayton. I was a guy that went to San Francisco as well. But it was a pretty deep class. And so, you never know where you're going to end up and, what team is gonna take a chance on you. And so as you're sitting there watching receiver after receiver go, I think I was the 4th receiver picked. I know when Buffalo was one of the teams I visited, and when they came up, I was optimistic. I'd say I was optimistic. Okay. I knew they had a lot of interest in me, and so. When they made the pick, I was at home. I was at home when for the draft, around family and friends, and so to get that pick at that time it was a huge relief.
Were you invited to New York?
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, I was in the draft room that day, Lee, and when it was our time, we were on the clock. All I remember, there were times where there were actually still discussions going on. A big one with Willis McGahee. I'll never forget that one. But, they're on the clock for 10 or 15 minutes, whatever it was. And their decision to pick you was like 10 seconds. Like when you were there, Tom Modrak leaned over to Tom Donahoe, and they were like, "It's Lee Evans, right? Lee Evans, yeah, call him." I mean, it was just they wanted you. When you were there, they say this all the time. We were happy you was there. The Bills were happy you were there. I can promise you. So you get that call, and what an exciting day.
Yeah, it was, and oddly enough, Buffalo is, the closest city I could have played in to Cleveland. Being originally from Cleveland is, super close. My family to come, and so over the years of my years being in Buffalo, my family came up to, pretty much every home game.
Awesome.
And and really became a part of that Buffalo tailgate and community.
So coming from Cleveland, then going to Wisconsin, obviously you're one of those guys that Buffalo was not really an adjustment. Some of the guys that we've talked to, either from a real small school or from the South or from the West Coast, Buffalo's like, oh God. But you put Cleveland, Madison, Wisconsin. Was it an easy adjustment? Did it help you at all coming here rather than going to San Diego or Jacksonville or Dallas?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's nothing new. You're kind of used to it. You expect it. And really, for me, that's kind of how I grew up watching and playing football, is in the cold, in the snow, in those type of elements. So for me, it was something I actually looked forward to and had a lot of fun playing in.
So you wanted number 3 because you wore 3 in college. Ironically, today you probably could have gotten it. But the next thing, so you had 84, but then you wanted 83. Buffalo had a pretty darn good receiver who wore 83. So sure there was some kind of conversation there before you ended up getting it. How'd that work out?
It was, well, originally when I got there, Mark Campbell had the number.
Oh, okay, that's right.
And so, he had it. And so I kind of approached him about, would he be willing to switch? But then, having to have the conversation with Andre about, another receiver having the number, and, would that be okay with him? Could he give me his blessing to do so? And, he was, and he was supportive. He was supportive of it. And, and I think, over, all my years there, he was really supportive of me, and really, had my back, was in my corner, and, really pushed me to try to be as good as I can. So he was a big influence on me while I was there. And, a lot of words that he gave me were great.
Did you have to buy him dinner or send him a bottle of wine or something to get the number? Because you always hear those stories about guys who are, giving lavish gifts to, a player to change numbers.
Yeah, no, not to Andre, but Mark Campbell, he was a veteran, so I had to look out for him a little bit.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. No, I like that. That's funny.
So a lot of things we hear, especially like from receivers, they'll talk about coming into the NFL. A couple things stand out to them. It's the speed, which I'm sure really was not a big adjustment for you. You were the one dishing out the speed. But getting off the line of scrimmage, we've had, even Don Beebe said, he came in first day of minicamp, he was like, oh my gosh, it's so hard to break free. And he ended up taking like Taekwondo lessons or something. Just like, was that an adjustment for you on your first minicamp or training camp?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because there's a big difference between being open in college and open in the NFL, right? It's a very, very small window. And so, luckily I had 2 really, great DBs who worked with me, during training camp, after practice, Nate Clemens and Troy Vincent.
Nice.
So, I would sit there and and just get beat up a little bit, but it made me better, and those guys really, really, that defense at the time was a fantastic defense. Just loaded with, veteran talent and guys who've been around, and, guys who really, really, pushed us and pushed me to get better. So like I said, those guys would stay after, and, we would work on press releases and work on press releases and work on press releases. And till I became a little bit more comfortable with it, and, been able to use it in games, and, make it beneficial for me.
I think that's the first time we've heard a receiver say that the DBs on the team help them with that, other than just making it hard and having them learn it on their own.
Nate Odoms would stand over Don Beebe apparently and let him know that he had a lot to work on. It wasn't quite as of a beneficial relationship, I don't think.
So constructive, yeah.
Right? So you played with Eric Moulds. And one of my things as a kid growing up in Buffalo and then being, with the coaching staff in the late 90s and 2000s, Eric Moulds needs to be on the Wall of Fame, I believe. Can you just tell us what it's like, what he was like to be as a teammate, as a leader, and as somebody who you were able to learn from as well?
I mean, I probably spent more time with Moulds than with anybody, especially, with, my first 2 years before he left. I mean, he really showed me the ropes. He would show me, how to watch film, right? How to break down DBs. Even methods on how to catch, right? Because he had very strong hands. He was very aggressive to the ball, so we would talk football, but also off the field, and some of the things that he did that was successful, and and I took as much of that as I could, and brought it into my life. And so Moulds was there, kind of lock and step the whole my first 2 years really. And he really just kind of showed me around Buffalo, introduced me to a lot of people, and really held me under his wing to to kind of bring me up to speed to try to help me get better, because we really all wanted to win, especially that first year, my rookie year coming in. The second year kind of got a little more dicey with, some guys left and, things like that. But, that rookie year, I think the consensus of everybody was we had a good enough team to get into the playoffs and, and try to make a run. And, we came up just short.
Yeah, just that one game. So a lot of guys will have signature games when you, like you, Lee, are your third all-time for the Bills in receiving yards and TDs. So you had a lot of really good games, but a couple I wanted to ask you about, they're pretty obvious, but the one play you made against the Jets, you and Darrelle Revis, it was kind of a 50-50, and you ended up winning that 50-50 and icing the game. What do you remember?
First down for the Bills at the 15. The snap. Lossman sets up deep to throw. Looking deep downfield, looking for Evans at midfield. Jump ball, and who's got it? Lee Evans has it at the 40. He will walk into the end zone. Lee Evans outfought his man, and he gets into the end zone. Touchdown, Buffalo. 85 yards.
Yeah, I remember. And this was back when Revis, he was just starting to come into his own, and he was, a really good player. And then, subsequent years, we've had a number of battles, since then. But that play alone was, just one of those balls where, it was JP, and JP trusted me. And I think that's why we had a really good relationship and, really good chemistry on and off the field. But, on the field, he wasn't afraid to just throw it up and let me make a play. Mm-hmm. And so, and that was one of those plays where he just threw it up, and, you knew it was going to be a dogfight. It was going to be a dogfight. The safety was coming over. So I just tried to be as strong to the ball as possible and, and make a play on the ball. And I just remember just fighting for it through him and coming out the back end. And
how many times have you watched that? How many times have you watched that play over again?
I've seen it a few times. I've actually talked to Revis about it. He'll claim that he got hit by the safety.
Of course, right. There's always something. That's funny.
Right. You made it. Yeah, you not only made the play, you ended up running 85 yards for the touchdown, which ended up being the game winner. So that's funny. Special.
I know Don also wanted to bring up, your probably your most famous game, your most famous quarter in 2006. You had the two 80-yard touchdowns, 83-yard touchdowns, right in the first quarter, becoming the first player in NFL history to do something like that. Can you? I guess maybe a different way to ask the question: did anything feel different? Like, did you have any inkling that might be a possibility, or is it just something that, hey, these two plays came up, and it is what it is on that day?
Drops the throw, 5-step drop, slips, throws deep, looking deep downfield for Lee Evans. He has separation. He's got it. Evans at the 30. He's headed to the end zone at the 20, the 10, 5, touchdown. With 4 receivers in the game, first down at the 17. Austin takes it, looks left, looking deep, looking for for Evans. Got him in stride in midfield. Evans hits a foot race at the 20, at the 10, cruises into the end zone. Touchdown.
You know, again, it's almost back to that Michigan State where we knew we were going to get a lot of one-on-one coverage. We knew we were going to be singled up outside. And because, you know, the Texans, they wanted to put some pressure on JP and, you know, try to get to the quarterback. And, you know, again, you know, he just I think one of them was, I think they both may have been double moves. And so, you know, JP was able to buy a little bit of time and just throw it out there and let me go get it. So it just happened to be, you know, one of those quarters, one of those moments where, you know, we kind of got the same look both times and made them pay. So it was fun to be a part of, but you know, it's just the first quarter, right? You still got a whole game to, you know, to play and, you know, and try to go and win.
It was a crazy game because obviously we go up 14-0 or whatever, 14-3. Houston came back, they take the lead, and it took a last play touchdown to Peerless Price in the back of the end zone that they had to review to see that he got touched both feet. But to me, I was in the press box that day and in Houston, and I was confused because after your first one, I had gone to the bathroom, I was talking to Kevin Megank, I remember, and the press box was really high. And so we were kind of relying on the scoreboard. And I remember looking at the field scoreboard, and for some reason, I was watching the scoreboard. I'm like, why are they showing that play again? It was happening. And then it was just incredible. They were almost like identical plays. But in your view, and maybe I don't know who the offensive coordinator was, but what made you think that play would be there again? Like, they wouldn't make an adjustment? They wouldn't have a more safety help, or the corner might just do something different to ensure that, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again.
Yeah,
but you thought it could.
They were trying to put pressure on JP, so they figured they could put some pressure on JP, get sacks before he get the ball off.
Okay, and
so like I said, JP did a great job of just buying some time. And I think if you look at the clip, I mean, he's actually like, you know, kind of ducking down, like, you know, throwing it and, you know, trying to get up and duck down to avoid the hit. But, you know, they were really just trying to light us up and, you know, put as much pressure on us and stop the run. And that opened up some opportunities down the field. And, you know, we were able to take advantage of them early. And then, you know, adjustments were made after that.
For those of us who will never do that, can you explain to me what it feels like after you catch the ball and you know you're gone? Like, what is that? Are you looking at the scoreboard? Like what's that feeling?
You're a track star, you know, you're not going to get caught, right?
This the best. It's the best. When you catch and just see just open field in front of you, you know, it's just the only thing you're thinking. And the only thing you're thinking is, I just better not get caught.
Right.
You know, that's the worst.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you ever look up the scoreboard? Like, see if anybody's behind you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that weird? That's got to be such a weird visual that you're running and you're looking up at yourself. And is it delayed? Is it like maybe a second behind on the scoreboard? Like,
I mean, you can't tell when you're running. You just looking up to see if kind of anybody's around. But
God, what a weird.
You're really focused on the goal line, just trying to get there.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, those of us, thank you for doing that, because those of us that will never do that unless we do it in our own backyard against the dog or something.
Yeah,
maybe in a turkey trot or something.
There you go. So as as your career went on, obviously there were some big personalities that kind of came into the wide receiver room. And before the interview, I was asking Don, what you're like, and Don said you're real, studious and smart, but not necessarily a big personality. So when you get a guy like T.O., Stevie Johnson, those guys, how did that affect you at all? Did you like playing with guys who had big personalities, or did you what was the receiver room like?
We never had a bad receiver room. Big personalities they were great. And it was one that never, I never really clashed with anybody on an ego sense. Everybody kind of had their own way of doing things. Even when you look at like Roscoe Parrish, right? He was a eccentric, big personality. Josh Reed, Peerless was a little bit more low key, but he was big. Moles and T.O. But in the receiver room, we were all really just we were all, about the same thing. ideally was, trying to find a way to win. And, in the time that we played in Buffalo was, some challenging years. So, we all wanted to find a way to try to, get as many wins as possible. And I think for everybody, genuinely, we wanted to see everybody else do well as well. I mean, I think everybody had enough confidence in themselves to know that they had the talent and, had the wherewithal to be successful. It's just how can we all do it together? And, year in and year out, we would do things together as receivers, as a unit, as a group, and and try to keep that positivity between us, so we can go out and play hard. And even if there was somebody else stepping up, if somebody went down, another one of the younger receivers step up and play, we'd all have his back as well. So
yeah,
the big personalities and all of that was great. I mean, I think it was more for TV, but on the practice field, in the meeting rooms, largely it was, we didn't run into a lot of animosity.
Yeah, you talk about those teams, and they often had, like you alluded to earlier, one of those years, couple of those years, the defense was just amazing, and then there were years where the running backs or the running game was the top of the league. And you mentioned some of the receiving core that you played with; they were some of the best, but it was just tough to get more of those units that were good at the same time. Josh mentioned the big personalities. One of the players that I want to ask you about is kind of the opposite of that, but we had George Wilson on, and man, what a story. So he's told basically one year, in order for him to make the roster, he's got to go from the receiver room that you were in, and they're telling him, if you want to make the roster, your only shot, it might be at safety. And so he says, okay, I'll give it a shot. What was it like? Like, well, all of a sudden he's in the receiver room on practice, and the next day he's playing safety. Like, how did you think that was going to play out for him?
I mean, we were all shocked. We were all shocked because George was he was a glue guy, right? I mean, he worked as hard as anybody you'd ever see work. He was, wherever you needed him on the field, he would fit in. Special teams, offense, and then defense. But he worked hard, and he was selfless. Anything that he could do to try to give himself a chance to play or help somebody else, that's who he was. So, for him to try to, for them to put that on him and make him go to defense for us, I mean, we were pulling for him. Pulling for him, hoping that, he could make that transition. But I mean, he worked his tail off. He worked his tail off to not only make the team, but, to subsequently, play years after at that position for multiple teams. So,
yeah.
I mean, that's really a testament to him and really his work ethic and, the type of guy he is to be able to, take the ego away and make that transition and be successful at it. I mean, he's one of the great guys that I got to know over the years, and it was great to come in him, see him as a rookie, coming in together and kind of grow up together and see his success. It's really been great.
You think you could have pulled that off, Lee?
No.
No, that's amazing. I mean, gosh, can you imagine being good enough to be on both sides of the ball in the NFL? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Lee, you were telling us that in your rookie year, it was Troy Vincent and Nate Clements that were helping you. When George switched to defense, I'd imagine you're the kind of guy that would talk to him, whether it's in practice or whatever, and say, hey, this is what the safety, I would think, make it hard for me as a receiver if a safety did this or that.
Yeah, I mean, he was more safety, so it's not like we saw each other, one-on-one,
sure,
very much. But we would talk, afterwards and say like, hey, yeah, if we see you sitting, like, this is, some of the things how we try to attack you,
yeah,
right. Some of the things that you can work on and how what we see on film, how we try to attack you. So
yeah,
interesting.
So we try to give them, some, some tips to try to help them get better for sure.
So the end of your Bills tenure, were you surprised that you got traded? Was it something that, maybe you thought it was time? Can you kind of take us back to that day?
Yeah, I heard that might be a possibility. And it was a whole new coaching staff coming in, a new GM, and and so I know they want to kind of put their stamp on things, and get a little younger, and things like that. And so the writing was kind of on the wall there from their standpoint. And Stevie was coming into his own there. He had some other young receivers there that were good. So like I said, I heard it, but when it was all coming down, and in training camp, was it really going to happen? By the time it happened, I knew it was coming. It was just really a matter of where I was going to end up.
Yeah, I feel you. And a lot of the things you just said about different regime coming in, they have their own ways, their own people. That was me in 2017 to a much lesser extent. And Lee, you were so highly thought of.
You didn't warrant a 4th round pick, Don.
No, I did not. No, they gave me a little something.
You were a great director of football administration, but you were not worth a 4th round pick.
No, I don't think that was part of it. But this is we've taken a lot of your time.
Yeah, we got to end with the 2-minute warning.
We have to do the 2-minute warning.
Yeah, so Lee, we ask 10 questions, kind of fun off the wall questions, and try to keep it under 2 minutes. So Don, go ahead.
Okay, Lee, your most interesting place to watch a Bills game or an NFL game or a Wisconsin game?
Interesting place.
Yeah.
It's actually a place here in Northern Virginia called Jimmy's Old Town Tavern. Makes you feel like you're in Buffalo at the Big Tree.
Nice. Beautiful. 3 people, dead or alive, you'd want to have dinner with.
Oh.
I didn't put this in my text message to him that we were going to do this.
Good.
Obama,
okay.
Jim Brown,
okay,
and Mike Tyson.
Oh,
all right.
That would be an interesting table. That would be an interesting table.
Quick Mike Tyson story. I grew up in the Adirondacks, and he was from Kingston, and a friend of mine went to a fight of his in Glens Falls Civic Center. They paid like $75, which was a ton of money at the time. They were out getting a beer for one of the undercard fights, and this Tyson fight lasted 16 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
They missed the whole thing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So anyway, you're going into an arena. Lee, you're a big deal, dry ice. What is your entrance song?
Probably a Tupac song.
There you go.
Yeah, it'd be a Tupac song. I had to choose, but it'd be a Tupac song.
Fair enough. What is your favorite road environment in college football?
I tell you, my most shocking one was Oregon.
Okay.
Oregon was surprisingly loud to only be like 50,000 people.
Okay.
It's kind of got that unique design of the stadium, right?
Yeah, like down in a valley, but it was very, very loud to be so small. So that was the most shocking one.
Okay. Interesting. Best concert you've ever seen?
Best concert. Well, it was called the Best of Both Worlds. It was Jay-Z and R. Kelly.
Oh, that works. Your favorite Buffalo restaurant, and what did you get there? What do you get there?
Okay, well, Hutch's is fantastic. I love that steak sandwich over there.
Nice. Okay. Can you drive a stick shift?
Yes.
All right.
What's a popular food but you hate it?
Sushi.
Oh,
interesting. Favorite cartoon growing up as a kid?
Scooby-Doo.
Right.
What's the most annoying fan base in the NFL?
Jets fans.
That's a popular one.
Your top 3 all-time favorite sports movies?
Major League, 1 and 2. Any Given Sunday.
All right, last one here. This is the one that always gives the guys consternation. Can you sing us 5 seconds of the Wisconsin fight song?
No, I cannot.
That's all right.
That's okay. Right. Thanks so much for your time, Lee. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks reconnecting with you. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Do you come up to Buffalo ever? Do you catch some games up here?
I do. I usually catch one game at least. Somewhere around the home opener. So I'll be up there this fall for sure.
Excellent.
Great. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Lee.
Take care.
All right.
Thanks.